Have you ever wondered how many times you were respected for being good? Have you ever felt that the more you try to please, the less you're valued? And what if your obsession with being a good person is precisely what's destroying you? Everyone sees what seems to be, but few feel what you really are. Niccolo Machiavelli said, "The truth is simple but cruel. You are tired. You may not even know exactly why, but you feel as if you carry an invisible burden, a constant obligation to keep everything in balance, to please everyone, avoid conflicts, be understanding. From a young age, they taught you that being good was the way, that good people prevail in the end, that if you are just, honest, humble, the world's intrinsic justice will recognize it. But what if all that is a comforting lie, a script taught to keep you obedient, predictable, manageable? How many times have you silenced your voice to preserve peace? How many times have you swallowed tears, anger, pride, just to avoid disappointing anyone? How many times have you allowed someone to humiliate you and still smiled, saying, "It's okay"? That kindness they told you was a virtue may just be a disguised leash. The world doesn't reward the good. The world rewards the strategic. And if you're here listening to this, it's because you felt it in your own skin. You've been frustrated being the nice guy, the understanding person, the friend who gets everything. And you felt with a silent pain that the more you give, the less you get. The more you bend, the more they demand. The more you try to be accepted, the less you're respected. This is where Machiavelli steps in, not as the demon history painted him, but as one of the first men brave enough to speak the naked, raw truth. Pure morality, divorced from reality, is a trap. Being seen as good is not the same as being effective. Living to please everyone means becoming a hostage to your own kindness. This video is an invitation to break free. Let's cross together the veil of moral lies. Let's expose the discomfort, the dark and necessary truth behind the obsession with being good. You don't need to become cruel, but you need to wake up, because as long as you try to please everyone, you will be a slave to the image they built of you. And if you're already tired of being used, ignored, discarded, maybe it's time to learn from Machiavelli what they never taught you. How to stop being too nice and start being respected. Are you ready? Then come, because transformation begins. The lie of being good. How virtue becomes a prison. You grew up hearing that being a good person was the right thing, that kindness begets kindness, that if you're honest, just, patient, the universe will conspire in your favor. But what if I told you that this idea is a carefully disguised trap? That kindness without strategy is just bait in a world that operates on interest, control, and utility. The truth is, being good in common terms has become synonymous with erasure. To be good now means not asserting yourself, not saying no, not causing discomfort. It means silencing your own pain so you don't inconvenience others. And the perversest part, the more you try to be good, the further you drift from who you truly are. Being good the way you were taught means forgetting yourself to fit others' expectations. It means playing a social actor reciting lines you no longer believe, and the audience applauds, but not out of admiration, out of convenience. Because as long as you stay predictable, accessible, and docile, you're harmless. And what doesn't threaten isn't respected. Machiavelli, in his brutal clarity, said that a ruler who wants to be merely good will end up destroyed by those who are not. Kindness by itself is not virtue, it's naivete. And naivete, in this world, is an invitation to abuse. A man who always wants to act virtuously is doomed among so many who are not virtuous. Reread that phrase from Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. Let it hurt if it must, because that cut might be the start of your freedom. The reality is that you were educated to please, not to live. From early on, they taught you that acceptance depended on obedience. Don't shout. That's rude. Swallow your tears. Be good. Little by little, you learned that feeling was wrong, reacting was impolite, imposing limits was aggressiveness. You learned to emotionally mutilate yourself to be accepted. But the question I ask you now is, accepted by whom? Respected by whom? Valued by whom? Because in the end, even doing everything right, you still feel invisible. You still have to beg for recognition. you still live with the sensation that you're always in debt, always lacking, always nearly enough. This is where collapse begins. Kindness becomes a prison. You're locked in a cell decorated with pretty phrases. You're so kind, so understanding, always balanced. But behind every compliment, there is an unspoken demand. Keep disappearing so I feel comfortable. And you keep going, even when it hurts, even when it enrages you, even when your silence screams from within. The tragedy is that you mistake that suffering for nobility. You think you're doing right, that you're being integral. But the world doesn't see your intention. The world reacts to your posture. You may have the purest heart and still be trampled, because purity without presence is just another victim on the floor. Kindness without strength becomes currency for the clever, excuse for exploiters, main course for emotional predators who feed on your guilt, your hesitation, your desperate will to be accepted. And the more you try to prove you're reliable, the more you become a tool, not a person, a tool. Have you noticed that those who impose respect don't need to explain anything? Have you noticed that those with limits, even if not beloved, are listened to, while you, with all your kindness, keep being interrupted, overloaded, forgotten? That happens because the world doesn't respect the agreeable. It respects those who impose consequences. Machiavelli wasn't an advocate of cruelty. He was a surgeon of reality. He looked at the world and saw what no one wanted to see. Morality, when blind, is a domination strategy, and those who live to appear good will sooner or later lose everything, up to themselves. The good person who refuses to face the game becomes disposable. You can give everything, time, affection, loyalty, but the day you stop being useful, you'll be ignored. And the cruelest part, with no guilt, no resentment. After all, you never demanded more than that. The world understands limits. It doesn't understand sacrifice. So here's the first uncomfortable truth that needs hearing. Your kindness is imprisoning you, not because it's wrong, but because it's being used against you. And as long as you keep hiding behind the image of a good person, you will deny your strength, your voice, your dignity. You weren't born to please everyone. That hunger for acceptance, that urgency to avoid conflict, that fear of causing discomfort was learned, conditioned, imposed. From a very early age you understood, perhaps without words, perhaps only through looks and subtle punishments, that being your whole self wasn't enough. You learned that love came at a price, and the price was your silence. As a child, it was enough to say, "I didn't like that," or "that hurt me," to be told you were spoiled, ungrateful, or overreacting. Crying at the wrong time led to scolding. Being your spontaneous, emotional, honest self meant being shaped into something else. And so, you shaped yourself. It started with small gestures, a forced smile here, a fake "I'm fine" there. Soon, it became a way of life, swallowing your feelings, giving in before anyone asks, pretending not to care. All of this became routine, because at some point in your life, you learned that your emotional survival depended on not being rejected. The problem is that this adaptation became submission. It became an automatic mechanism of self-abandonment. You became a master at sensing what others want to hear, at reading the room, measuring your words, anticipating disappointments, just to avoid the discomfort of being poorly perceived. But do you know what's even more cruel? You think this is empathy, but it's not. It's fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of being judged, fear of being called selfish, difficult, insensitive, fear of being who you really are, with limits, desires, anger, and a voice. And while you live this fear disguised as kindness, the world reads you exactly as you show yourself. Weak. Machiavelli knew this. He didn't speak of psychology in the modern sense, but he understood the human soul like few others. He knew that people respect what imposes consequences. He knew that those who never threaten, never confront, never impose, are never taken seriously. And this applies to you. You can be kind, but if you never take a stand, you'll be treated like a tool, not a person. You can be generous, but if you never say enough, you'll be drained to exhaustion. And worst of all, no one will feel guilty about it. Because the world doesn't measure goodness, it measures usefulness. And if your kindness is always offered without criteria, without reciprocity, without pause, it stops being a virtue and becomes a resource. Have you noticed how the nice ones are always running after, always justifying, explaining, apologizing for existing, while those who set boundaries, even if less likable, are heard, respected, remembered? That's no coincidence. It's a psychological structure, an emotional power hierarchy. The submissive lives in fear of being abandoned. The assertive lives in clarity, knowing who can stay and who can go. The submissive hides behind masks of empathy. The assertive shows their face, even when it's uncomfortable. The submissive hopes their kindness will speak for itself. The assertive knows that without presence, there is no respect. And here lies one of the greatest emotional confusions of our generation. The idea that being nice is the same as being good. It's not. Being nice is being agreeable. Being good is being just. Being nice is avoiding conflict. Being good is facing what's necessary. Being nice is smiling on the outside while bleeding on the inside. Being good is saying, "This hurts me, and I won't accept it anymore." The psychology of the submissive is, in fact, the psychology of fear. Fear of breaking fragile bonds. Fear of not being loved. Fear of losing a space that only exists because you agreed to live bowed. But here's a harsh truth. The one who lives in fear of being abandoned is already abandoning themselves every single day. And if you keep living like this, afraid to displease, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being yourself, you'll end up empty. You'll look in the mirror and no longer know who you are. You'll live as everyone's favorite character, except your own. Because the price of submission is self-extinction. Machiavelli would say, it's not about being loved, it's about not being ignored. And that only happens when you have the courage to impose yourself, to say no, to represent consequences. Of course, being cruel isn't the solution, but being harmless isn't either. There is a middle path, but it's only accessible when you understand that being submissive is not being good. It's being conditioned. It's being trained to please. It's being kept in a perpetual state of fear and emotional dependency, and you deserve to get out of that. But to do so, you must face a brutal question. Is your kindness born of love or of fear? Because if it's born of fear, it's not kindness, it's armor. It's a shield. It's a prison, and you weren't made to live in prison. You were made to become whole. You've spent your life believing that you would be recognized for your essence, that being sincere, just humble, would be enough for people to see your truth. But Machiavelli, over 500 years ago, wrote a sentence that pierces any naive idealism like a dagger. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Niccolo Machiavelli, the Prince. This phrase is a blow and a revelation. It shows us that the world doesn't respond to your inner truth. The world responds to your image, to what you represent, to the impact you cause, to the fear or respect you evoke. It's cruel, yes, but it's real. And as long as you keep waiting for others to recognize your good intentions, you'll continue to be ignored by those who know how to play the game. Because life, whether you like it or not, is a game of perception. And Machiavelli didn't write to create monsters. He wrote to teach survival. He knew that in a world populated by wolves, being only a lamb is asking to be devoured. But there is a way out, and it starts with a new kind of virtue. Not the kind preached by moralists, which demands purity, passivity, and submission, but Machiavellian virtue, a blend of courage, strategic intelligence, emotional composure, and firm presence. Machiavelli said that the prince, the one who wants to govern his life rather than be governed by it, must be like two animals, the fox and the lion. The prince must know how to use the nature of both. Be a fox to recognize traps, be a lion to scare off wolves. This metaphor is one of the most brutal and most liberating ever written. The fox is cunning. She observes, reads the environment, perceives hidden intentions. She knows when to stay silent and when to move. She doesn't trust blindly. She sees through masks. The lion commands respect. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't apologize. His presence is enough to say, "Not with me." He doesn't need to be cruel. He needs to be inevitable. And here is the key. You need to be both. You need to see emotional games before they consume you. And you need to be strong enough to make others think twice before testing your limits. Because as painful as it is, that's what the world respects. Presence, boundaries, consequences. You don't have to stop being sensitive, generous, or compassionate, but you must understand that those qualities, without structure, without limits, become traps. The same compassion that heals can also destroy you, if given to those who only want to use you. That's why Machiavelli invites us to stop seeking approval and start building inner authority. Not the authority that shouts, dominates, or instills fear through brute force, but the one that commands respect through steady silence, through the clarity of no, through the courage to be yourself, without kneeling for acceptance. And here is the turning point. You don't need to become a tyrant. You need to stop being a ghost. The world treats well those who have power. And that power begins with your ability to say enough, to stop justifying yourself, to understand that not everyone deserves explanations, let alone your best. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stop asking for permission to exist. The image you project carries weight, and if you present yourself as someone always accessible, always nice, always available, you will be treated as a resource, and a resource can be discarded at any moment. But when you present yourself with presence, with a steady gaze, a clear voice, and a non-negotiable posture, you start to change the way the world sees you. And more importantly, you begin to change the way you see yourself. Because the greatest power Machiavelli teaches is not to dominate others. It's to stop being dominated by the fear of displeasing. Yes, you can be loved, but being feared, in the sense of being taken seriously, of representing a force, is often the safest path to being respected. And respect is the foundation of any true relationship. Without it, everything is just theater. So, look at yourself now. Have you been a fox, or do you keep falling into emotional traps? Have you been a lion, or do you roar inwardly while smiling on the outside? Is the image you project aligned with the value you carry, or do you make yourself small, hoping the world will notice your hidden greatness? The prince, in this context, that's you, yes, you, needs to wake up, needs to take off the cloak of innocence and put on the armor of clarity. Needs to learn that being strategic is not betraying your essence, it's protecting your truth, and more, it's giving yourself the right to choose who you give your best to, because your best is not an obligation, it is a gift. And a gift should only be given to those who honor it, not to those who consume it. Here comes the question you've avoided your whole life. Do you want to be loved, or do you want to be free? It sounds cruel, almost inhuman, but it's the choice that Machiavelli silently forces you to make. Because the pursuit of being loved, when rooted in fear, in need, in emotional dependence, is the subtlest of prisons, and worse, it's a prison where you yourself lock the door. You don't need bars when you crave approval. You don't need shackles when you're afraid to displease. You don't need external censorship when you sabotage yourself internally to fit into others' expectations. The truth no one wants to face is this. The obsession with being seen as good, nice, pleasant does not come from virtue. It comes from shame. Shame of being who you are, and that shame is sneaky. It disguises itself as humility, dresses as kindness, masks itself as empathy. But deep down, it's just your secret belief that you are not enough as you are. So you mold yourself, recalibrate yourself, adapt to every environment, to every person. You say yes when you want to say no. Forgive too quickly. Smile when everything inside you wants to scream. And then, when you realize it, you've spent your life maintaining an image that isn't even yours. You became what others needed you to be and forgot who you were before that. The man who lives only to be loved will always be a slave to others' eyes. The one who wants to be free must be willing to be misunderstood. That phrase isn't from Machiavelli, but it could be, because what he teaches us is that freedom begins when you stop caring about what others expect from you and start living according to what you demand of yourself. But don't be mistaken, that path is not sweet. It's arid, lonely. Many people will drift away. They'll say you've changed, that you've grown cold, that you're acting strange. And you'll ask yourself, am I being cruel? No. You're finally being honest. And honesty, after years of self-deception, is scary. It's uncomfortable, because it breaks the invisible pact you had with the world. I sacrifice myself, and in return, you love me. But the currency they paid you with was counterfeit. It wasn't love, it was convenience. And when you decide to step out of the role of the nice one, the one who understands everything, the one who accepts everything, you break that pact and begin writing a new contract with yourself. I will be loyal to my truth, even if it costs me the acceptance of those who only knew how to love me when I stayed silent. True freedom requires you to let go of the character. It demands that you tolerate the discomfort of not pleasing everyone. It asks you to hold the gaze of those who disapprove without lowering your eyes. Because love that's truly worthwhile does not require your self-erasure. And the kind of respect that strengthens you doesn't come from submission. It comes from coherence, from the courage to be whole, from the boldness of being enough for yourself. And here comes the most brutal part of all. No one is going to free you. There will be no applause, no diploma, no finish line with fireworks saying, "Congratulations, now you're free." You'll have to free yourself, alone, in silence, in discomfort, in the pent-up rage that you'll turn into clarity, in the old pain that you'll use as your foundation. And when that happens, something changes forever. You no longer beg for affection. You no longer plead for recognition. You choose. You decide who to open the doors to, and who to keep them closed for. That's what it means to be the prince of yourself. To stop being a subject of others' opinions. To abandon the false throne of the beloved nice one, and take the throne of your truth. Yes, you can continue being a good person, but not a good person at the cost of your soul. Not a good person who accepts everything in silence. Not someone who erases themselves in the name of a goodness that only serves others. Because if that's the case, then you're not good. You're domesticated, and no one was born for that. So I ask you now, directly, no detours. Do you want to be loved, or do you want to be free? The answer isn't in your head. It's in your choices, and in what you'll do from here on out. You've gone through 4 layers. You've deconstructed the idea of goodness. You've recognized the roots of your submissive behavior. You've discovered the strategic power hidden in Machiavelli's ideas. And finally, you've come face to face with the hardest choice of adult life. To please the world, or finally be loyal to yourself. The answer might still be echoing inside you, and that's okay. Real transformations don't come with fanfare. They come with silence, pain, and sometimes a little anger. But it's in that discomfort that the truest changes are born. The world respects those who respect themselves. The rest is just theater. And you deserve to step off the stage and take control of the script. If you've made it this far, something inside you probably no longer fits the old fantasy of being good at any cost. And that crack, that fracture in your social persona, is the beginning of your liberation. I remember the first time I realized my goodness was destroying me. It was during a conversation with a friend I admired, someone who, without knowing it, always told me the same thing with his eyes. "You're too kind for this world." At the time, I thought it was a compliment. Today, I see it was a warning. I accepted everything. I gave. I stayed silent. I adapted. But one day, after yet another situation where I found myself being ignored, I felt a rage burning inside me. Rage at others, maybe, but mostly rage at myself. That night, I wrote a sentence on a piece of paper and stuck it to the mirror. Being good is not erasing yourself. Being good is having the courage to fully exist. It took me years to understand the weight of that. And maybe you're going through that same process now. And if you are, I just want to say, I see you. This channel, these videos, these scripts, they're not about giving lessons. They're about lighting candles in dark hallways where many walk alone. And if one of those candles illuminated something inside you today, it was already worth it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, that's okay. Keep being nice. Keep letting life run you over. The algorithm loves people who live to please. Now, if you're ready to stop being the tame version of yourself, hit like, leave a comment below telling me the last time you said no without guilt, and subscribe. Not because I asked, but because from now on, you only do what you choose to do. Oh, and the videos popping up on the screen now. One of them will irritate you, The other will set you free. But I won't tell you which is which. You'll have to find out for yourself, like every transformation that truly matters. See you on the other side.